Hi guys, so today we're going to carry on talking through your ring muscle ups. Okay, so obviously if you haven't seen the video from last week where we go over your hips to rings and getting into that position, then I would definitely recommend that you go back and have a look at that, because today we're going to be focusing more on your transition. Okay, so obviously when it comes to transitioning for your ring muscle ups, all right, obviously we're going to assume you're already in that hips to rings position. Okay, so your hips are as close to the rings as possible, right? Obviously you've already fully extended your hips there, okay? Your feet are going to be just below your hips, okay, ideally. And you're also going to have your hands somewhere between kind of your hip and maybe the bottom of your ribs, in that kind of area following your hips to ring. Okay, now obviously from there, as you go into that transition, obviously the main goal is to get from that position over the top of the rings. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is to try and keep thinking of your body as one kind of solid object. Okay, what you don't want to do is throw your chest forward but leave your legs out in front of you. Okay, because what that's going to do is going to keep a lot of your weight in front of the rings, which is going to make that transition much harder. Okay, so what you need to think about is as your chest comes forward, you're going to let your feet come back underneath you. Okay, and what that's effectively going to do is going to help you use your own body weight to tip forwards over the rings into your catch, as opposed to trying to fight against it if you leave your feet out in front. Okay, so when you do transition into that catch position, so you're in the bottom of your dip, your feet are going to either be kind of underneath your hips, okay, maybe slightly in front, maybe slightly behind. Okay, like I said, it's going to help you get into that position, but also it's going to make sure you're in a good position ready to start your dip, particularly when you're looking at doing a kipping ring dip. Okay, but don't worry about that bit for now. Okay, other thing you want to focus on obviously is your positioning on the rings. Okay, so normally when you do a hips to ring, especially without a false grip, you're going to have your hands facing away from you. Okay, obviously as you transition, you want to make sure that you're keeping the rings in nice and tight, which means your hands are going to rotate slightly from being kind of in this kind of position to more of a neutral grip position, so that when you catch the rings, they're tucked in nice and tight to your body, as opposed to leaving them in this position, which is going to make it quite unstable, plus it's going to put a lot of pressure through your shoulder. Okay, so as you do transition, snap the rings in, rotate your hands in. It'll happen so fast you probably won't even notice. Okay, but if you do look back and you realize you are in that position, then that's something you want to try and focus on. Okay, as well as that, all right, try and keep your head looking straight forward. Okay, you don't want to end up really throwing yourself forward and finishing down here, because inevitably it's going to mean that you catch yourself in a very low dip, which is going to make your dip much harder. Okay, so what you want to try and do is keep looking straight forward. It's going to help you catch it with your chest up a little bit more, which, like I say, is going to make your dip much easier and be much less fatiguing. Okay, so always try and focus on that. Okay, and then especially when it comes to a non-false grip muscle up, as you do rotate your hands over the rings, okay, you do have to keep quite relatively speaking, a relaxed grip. Okay, if you're holding onto the rings really tight, then you're going to end up with your elbows over the rings, but your wrist quite bent, and your hand and the rings more towards the kind of like your fingers. Okay, whereas where you want to end up is with your whole arm over the top of the ring. Okay, so the ring's much more towards the palm of your hand. Okay, so if you're in that hips to ring or that just a normal swing position, you're going to be holding it, and it is going to be a little bit here. Okay, so as you rotate, when you transition, you've got to have a reasonably relaxed grip, so that when you do bring your chest forward, your hand just slides forward slightly over the ring. Okay, just like you would if you're doing them on the bar, so you end up in a much stronger position when you do catch that transition. Okay, so just play around with that. Again, it's something that happens quite fast, so you won't have too much time to think about it. All right, but if you find that you always tend to catch yourself and you feel like there's a lot of weight through your wrists and you have to struggle to get your shoulders that bit further forward to hold it, then that could be the problem. Okay, so have a play around with those few things, guys. All right, obviously the big thing with your ring muscle up transition, especially when you're starting to get the grips with them, is to really do them with confidence. Okay, you don't really have, it's a little bit like doing an Olympic lift. Okay, you can't really slow it down. You have to do it with a fair amount of speed and aggression to really master the technique. Okay, so you really want to focus on, obviously you've been through your hips to ring movement, the rings are down by kind of your belly button, between your, ideally around belly button height, but all closer to your hips. Okay, you're really going to emphasize bringing your chest forward. You're going to pull back on the rings at the same time as bringing your feet back underneath you. Keep your grip nice and relaxed. Keep your elbows tucked in, and you want to end up in a nice catch position with your shoulders in front of the rings, okay, tucked into your sides, keeping your chest up, ready to start that dip. Okay, so I hope that's helpful, guys. If you've got any questions, as always, feel free to give me a shout.